If you're going to do it at scale and if you're going to automate it and you're going to make it a good experience for the customer, you have to do it based on trusted, available, robust data. And in order to do that, you have to actually manage the data. Everyone talks about it being an asset, but if you think about the level of rigor most companies use to manage cash financial assets and the amount of rigor they use to manage their data assets, it's not the same.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Graeme Thompson. Graeme is the Chief Information Officer of Informatica, a leader in enterprise artificial intelligence-powered cloud data management that earns in excess of $1.6 billion in annual revenue. He's been in his role for a bit more than 8 years, and in it, Graeme is responsible for operations and user services, applications, and architecture. Additionally, the company's Chief Information Security Officer and Chief Data Officer report to him as well. As a leader of a company that is so data-centric, I look forward to speaking with him about the role the good data hygiene plays in capturing value associated with artificial intelligence generally and generative artificial intelligence more specifically, among other topics I'm sure we'll cover together. Graeme, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here.
Well, Graeme, why don't we begin with Informatica? Would love to have you describe the business in your own words.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people in the industry know Informatica or know the Informatica of the past, but today, as we sit in 2024, Informatica is the leader and arguably the only provider of AI-based data management capabilities that are all in the cloud. We have the pleasure of helping some of the world's most successful and innovative companies manage their data as the asset that it really is and use that data to support some of their most important business objectives. The objectives vary across industries, as you'd imagine, but typically include supporting analytics, customer 360, hyper automation using application integration, and of course, data quality and data governance. I think what makes us unique is that beyond having the best individual products in each category, which continues to be really, really important across data governance, data integration, MDM, etc., these are all available on the same platform with a consumption-driven pricing model that's flexible across all those products on one platform. And of course, we meet our customers where they live in reality, which is in a hybrid world that is multi-cloud.
That's a great overview. I appreciate that. And can you talk a bit about your role as Chief Information Officer? I talked a bit about your purview. Maybe you can fill in some gaps if there were any.
Yeah, so I have the responsibility for the traditional IT functions that you would expect an enterprise B2B type CIO to have. So infrastructure and operations, all of the end user services and technology that our almost 6,000 employees consume every day to do their jobs. And then all of the applications that run the end-to-end processes from demand generation through quote to cash, revenue reporting, and all of those traditional applications type things. What's not typical that I have is the information security function, which of course is becoming more and more important for all of us these days, and the chief data officer function. And then just recently, I took on the responsibility for AI within the enterprise, not AI in our products, but AI as it is used across the enterprise to accomplish our business outcome objectives.
A lot there that I look forward to unpacking a little bit further. So you mentioned you had the chief data officer reports to you, and you are fundamentally a data organization. I might also add an organization that serves a lot of your peers, where the customer is actually your peer as chief information officer, among other personas that and roles that your organization sells into. Talk a bit about the role you play in engaging with some of your peer group as an advocate on behalf of your company, certainly in a different way than salespeople within Informatica might.
Yeah, so I think, as IT people across all companies that I have encountered are usually pretty generous at sharing experiences, even although sometimes our companies compete with each other. As IT people, we're not competing with each other as peers in other companies. So I found it refreshing, but really useful to get some feedback from peers on how they accomplish things. We've all got the same vendors, we've all got the same problems, we've all got the same budget and capacity constraints. So there's either a birds of a feather or a misery loves company component to how we work together as peers across our companies. As you pointed out, we're a data organization. It should be no surprise then that we use a ton of our products inside the company in support of some of our most innovative, interesting, and impactful business objectives. And especially in the enterprise B2B space, that gives me the opportunity to talk to CIOs, CTOs, CDOs, and sometimes even the revenue operations people or the marketing operations people in our customers about how we've been able to use our data products to meet an end business objective that is worthy. So whether it is figuring out how to automatically route a lead to the right salesperson immediately and automatically so that it can get acted upon and progressed quickly, how to score a lead so that you're focused on the right things, understanding the install base, entitlement, other aspects of the customer, whether it is figuring out how to expand our net retention rate by making it easy for our customers and easier for our salespeople to do amendments within the contract term or at the point of renewal. Those business problems are common across the whole industry. And if you're going to do it at scale and if you're going to automate it and you're going to make it a good experience for the customer, you have to do it based on trusted, available, robust data. And in order to do that, you have to actually manage the data. Everyone talks about it being an asset, but if you think about the level of rigor most companies use to manage cash financial assets and the amount of rigor they use to manage their data assets, it's not the same. And I think that's what separates the best companies in the world from everyone else, is how they use their asset, whatever it is, to provide value for their customers and stakeholders. And these days, data definitely is one of the more important and relevant assets.
Talk a bit about, you mentioned your company-centered artificial intelligence responsibilities. Talk about the building blocks from the data lens that you just applied to capturing greater levels of AI value. Obviously, one begets the next, although I think there are a lot of people that are confused about the relationship, especially as they think about further advances in AI. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship, please?
Yeah, the confusion part is definitely true. It's one of these things, Peter, where I think if you only understand a little bit about it, it doesn't look that complex at all. But the more you understand, the more complicated it gets. And the way we think about it, so there's three pillars. The first pillar is AI from Informatica. So our customers can consume AI products from us that will help them manage their data lineage, catalog, create a marketplace, and generally speed up and make more productive all of that hard work that goes into managing your data pipelines. Then there is AI on Informatica, not from. So if you're going to build any kind of Gen AI capability, it has to be built on solid, trusted data. We've all had the bad experience using consumer grade Gen AI when the data that is used is not properly curated, of high quality, trusted, or even whether you're supposed to have access to it or not. So that is definitely a prerequisite. In our current branding is all about, everyone is ready for AI except your data. And what are you doing about that? Which is a pretty good umbrella message, but when you get down into all the different things you have to do to make your AI aspirations come true, it's a ton of work. And I think that this is different than some of the big technology changes in the past. If you think about cloud and SaaS, 15 years ago, people were fretting about putting their applications in the cloud or their compute in the cloud because of security. And people would say, I'm not doing it. I don't trust it. That seems like a ridiculous argument today in 2024, but that was the argument 15 years ago. But what's different is, as a consumer of that service, I didn't have to fix the security problem. I could wait for Salesforce and Oracle and Workday and Amazon and Google and Oracle to solve that problem for me. The data part is different. We all have to go solve that problem ourselves for our own company because Microsoft OpenAI is not going to solve the underlying data challenge. So that's the Informatica for AI part. And then the third part is what I've taken responsibility for, which is using AI inside Informatica to generate business outcomes to help provide a better experience for our customers and to align with our most important business objectives and find a way to use this newly available technology capability to solve those problems. It's not about here's this new thing, what can we use it for? It's about what's our business strategy? What do we have to accomplish to meet that strategy? And how can technology, of which GenAI is part, how can technology help us achieve that? And that's always been the job, I think, of a CIO. We now just have this powerful new capability at our disposal to help achieve that.
And can you talk a bit about getting even a little bit further into the progression of AI and Gen AI? What are some of the uses that you see as most powerful and have you most excited, whether they are fully realized or those that you think are in the not too distant future?
We've taken an approach internally of putting together, we're just calling it a COE, so a community of excellence, where we've got all these people that come together from all the different functions with either their problem or their idea to make sure that they are vetted from a privacy, legal, and security perspective. Is this a responsible thing to do? We also want to share so that we're not duplicating the same effort because it's moving so quickly that we don't want the marketing team and the customer success to clear the same problem at the same time without knowing what each other's doing. So we're bringing all of those groups together. And from that, some really interesting use cases have come out and some impactful use cases have come out. They're not always the same. Sometimes the challenge is to not work on the most interesting thing, but focus everyone on the most impactful thing. So I think there are definitely table stakes things which are interesting today in 2024, but honestly, in a year and a half, no one's going to care. So those things like assisted support for customers, absolutely, we're going to do that. Every company on the planet is going to do that. And by definition, it therefore won't be differentiating. So we're all going to do that. That tide will raise all boats and the customer support experience will get better and cost less. That's fantastic, but it's not moving any needle that anybody cares about. Then there's all the new capabilities around content creation and the things we're used to from the consumer lens of here's a prompt to make me something. And that's kind of interesting. It has some good applications in marketing, in product development, in IT. When you think about all the documentation and things like that that has to be created, translation into different languages, which it's gone from being expensive to almost free. Those kinds of things are interesting. The things I'm more excited about are where GenAI can play a role either at the beginning of a automation process or in the middle of an automation process where it may have broken down in the past because a human had to get involved. So, it's pretty easy to think about, here's a prompt, make me something, and then the output is the end. But what if the output was the beginning or the middle of the process? So if you have maybe a prompt that says, create a change request for something, and that's all the engineer puts in, and it knows the template. So it's going to create a change request. It's going to use application integration capabilities to go into ServiceNow or whatever you use for the change request, and it will create that thing and then kick off an automation process. So it can be used to speed up, make more scalable, make these processes higher quality, allowing us to do more of it, and also ensuring that the output is consistent. I'm excited about that. When you think about where we spend a ton of time today and where a lot of the wasted opportunity is when, let's say, an executive has a question about a KPI that the company's going after. So let's say it's churn. It's really expensive to get a new customer, so let's keep the ones we've got. So if you're trying to dig into what's going on with churn, the typical approach, today's approach, even in a company that has really good analytics capabilities, would be to have a series of dashboards with drill downs, which are answering questions that you had yesterday. Because you know the question, you've built a dashboard and you've built a filter to manage it. So if tomorrow you have a review with the head of sales or the head of marketing or the CEO, and they ask a question you haven't thought of, you have to go back to your sales operations person. They have to figure out if the data is available in the data platform that you have or in the application. They might then have to go back to an IT person to add that data element into the model or add it into Salesforce or wherever it has to go. And then you come back a week later and you give the executive the answer to their question from last week. And then he says, that's awesome. Can I see that by country? And then you go back and do the whole thing again. That's an incredible waste of time. And it's not about wasting the time of the IT person that has to do the same work twice or the time of the sales ops person. It's the opportunity that you're losing where you're not taking action in that 2-week period. So imagine instead when an executive can just have a conversation with the data through an LLM. And if you've got trust in that data that the churn number is going to be accurate, the territories are aligned properly in your CRM to assign the right accounts to the right region, that your currencies are all straight so that you're not getting a Canadian dollar answer to a US dollar question. All of those basic things are going to enable anyone to have a conversation with your data warehouse, your data lake, your analytics across your company. That's going to be a game changer for companies that have the foresight to think about it and are willing to put the hard work in to build the data model. And the third area, again, thinking about how much time we all waste. Think about how many hours, weeks, months we waste of some of our most talented people redesigning the UI in an application. If you're trying to make quoting self-service and your sales teams only do a dozen deals a year, they're never going to get good at quoting. And they're certainly never going to be able to do it in an out-of-the-box CPQ system. So what do? You get your most talented applications people together, you build a different UI that's hopefully simple enough for a salesperson to create their own quote. What if you don't have to do any of that anymore and you just have a prompt that says, create me a quote for 1,000 processing units per month for a financial services company focused on mass ingestion, storage, and data integration that you can then edit. Those types of things are going to be amazingly impactful. So there's a long answer to your question, but there's definitely near-term things that are interesting. Some of the interesting things will be impactful, but I'm more excited about the things that fall into those three categories that we're going to be able to do things in the future that we just can't do today. And we can do it if we focus on making sure that we've got data we can actually trust.
Well articulated. I appreciate you sharing perspectives on each of those, as well as talking about some of the building blocks to get there, Graeme. You've been a leader of Informatica during a consequential period in which it went private and then went public again. And I know that from our past conversations, part of the rationale for going private was to develop a cloud-first perspective, changing the way the business and your team operate. I wonder if you could talk a bit about those changes and the advantages of having been private during the course of making those changes.
It has been a very interesting journey thus far, and it's been 8 years, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's been 3 or 4 chapters of a shorter period of time. But we were always known as a company for having the best products in each individual space, and we knew that there was an opportunity if we could take all of those great products and make them the best products available in their space, available on the cloud, and then available on one platform. Because when you do data integration for the purposes of creating a data warehouse, you don't want to have to redo the integration for the purposes of connecting Salesforce with Oracle, for example. You want to leverage that work more than once if you can. So it makes a ton of sense to have these different complementary products sitting on the same platform. So from a go-to-market perspective, that was important. Ton of work to redo all these products. The part that my team was most involved in was the business model change. So selling enterprise software via a license and a maintenance contract is the way it was done for 20 years. It's the way that ERPs were designed. But selling cloud and subscription in a consumption-based model is a completely different thing. It's a team sport across marketing, sales, your pricing strategy teams, your customer success teams. It all has to work together, which from an IT applications perspective and data perspective, it meant for us that we had to redeploy or source different application solutions for everything from lead gen and go to market, our core opportunity and quote to cash process. Revenue recognition is different with ASC 606 than it was in the past. And then every KPI in the company changed. Instead of just tracking how much did you sell, you need to know what the churn rate is, what your ARR is, what your NRR is. All of these terms and KPIs were new. So we had to come up with, working with the business teams, come up with standard agreed definitions for them, instantiate those definitions into our data model so that we could do meaningful analytics across the company on all those things. So it's really been a journey of having the IT team directly participate in and support the business model transformation and making sure that the things we're working on every year are the things that are the most impactful for the business overall, not the individual good ideas of each department. But because we had this big company transformation to do, we had the opportunity to align at the top level business objective and then drill down from there instead of looking at a long list of great ideas and trying to prioritize them and align them and all that traditional waste of time stuff that IT people get stuck doing. So here we are. We're through that whole thing. As you said, we had gone private. We did the transformation while we were private. We went public again in October of 21. And since then, we've been on a cloud first, consumption driven journey where business applications, our data, all of those capabilities that run the operations are directly aligned with what we're trying to achieve as a business. And that's something that, as the IT leader, I'm very proud of. And as part of Informatica, proud of the whole overall transformation.
And talk about the process of going public, if you would. I know there are quite a number of steps to undertake, and IT-centric ones as well, to ensure the organization is well equipped to do so. Can you talk a bit about that experience?
Yeah, so our journey, I think, Peter, was different than it would have been if we had been a startup that had grown and then gone public. Because we used to be public, we had, not through good luck, but we were fortunate to have really good finance leaders who didn't abandon any of the public company processes when we were private. So from an audit rigor perspective, from how we reported, and even though we weren't filing with the SEC, we had investors who we would file with. So all of those public company disciplines were maintained through the 5 or so years that we were a private company. That made a lot of things easier, smoother, less risky, and more predictable when we went into the process of being ready to go public. On the IT side, we had just redeployed ERP. We had just redeployed a whole new quote to cash process on Salesforce, or quote to order process on Salesforce. So we needed to have 12 months of clean, auditable history so that our financial filings were very transparent and easy to trust. So from an IT perspective, that was a big deal, but it was easily doable. It was just necessary and something that we had to get done. And then obviously on the security side, there's a ton of due diligence things we have to do to make sure that privacy is taken care of. We've got the right certifications to do business in all of the places that we do business in, and making sure that with the new SEC disclosure requirements that we were really confident in our security maturity and posture and our ability to detect risk, manage risk, deal with incidents, all of those things. So a lot of it was increasing maturity or demonstrating maturity where we had it, and then just being ready. But it was an exciting cross-functional project for sure.
Yeah, fascinating. Really interesting. In fact, particularly interesting that so much of that muscle remained toned, shall we say, during your private years, making it a bit easier. Um, I wanted to ask you also about trends that excite you, Graham, as you look to the future. We've certainly talked about numerous of them related to data and artificial intelligence. As you look out in your crystal ball, are there others that particularly excite you?
At the moment, honestly, it's hard to see beyond AI and Gen AI, and I am encouraged that all the frenzy around Gen AI has rekindled the interest in let's call it traditional AI, which we've been doing for years, but it's really, really important. But everyone has stopped talking about it. And I think with the new energy around Gen AI, there's a lot more focus on traditional AI, and we're using that a lot throughout the company, and I expect that we will continue to. Our customers are doing a lot with traditional AI, so I think traditional AI has got a lot of legs to go. I think Gen AI is just getting started, and if we'd had this conversation 6 months ago, my ideas of what would be going on would be completely different. 6 months from now, it'll be I'm sure it'll be different again. From a non-technology what's going on perspective, I think most companies like ours are seeing attrition start to really slow down, which I think gives us a really good opportunity to develop the careers of the people that already work here instead of going out and hiring new people every time we have employee turnover. And I think the intersection between that and the let's say today's employees being much more purpose driven and focused on is what I'm doing every day worth my time as opposed to what's the job and what's the compensation. I think there's an intersection there that as leaders we can take advantage of. Uh, and it'll also help us deal with the escalating costs of continuing to turn over staff and hire new people. So there's definitely a organizational health uh, opportunity that is in front of us if we just take the time to breathe and look at it. I think that's definitely something that I'm excited about is thinking about early stage career employees that are with us today, the opportunity we have to let them live through the early stages of Gen AI and then seeing what these really smart people are going to be working on in 5 years. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, exciting indeed. I would ask you in conclusion, Graham, if I may, are there any books you've recently read, anything you've been listening to or watching that you would particularly recommend to your peer group, things that you found particularly enlightening, for instance? What comes to mind, if anything?
Yeah, so having listened to many of your podcasts, not all 900, so congratulations on hitting that milestone
Thank
a
you.
week or so ago. But I was expecting the question. So I've got three, and none of them are new. But the reason they're important to me is because I've read them over and over and over. So if I change jobs, if a new assignment comes along, if something changes, there are things in all of these books that I reread the whole thing. So the first one is Execution by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. And it's basically about the discipline of getting things done and reinforcing that strategy on its own is not going to accomplish a thing. You have to have a plan, but you need to execute the plan. And anyone that's played sports can see that completely. The second one is one of Patrick Lencioni's books. I love them all, but the Politics, Silos, and Turf Wars one is a great one to remind us that we need to rally our people around a common objective, not just individual brilliance in their function. So that's one that I've read over and over again. And the last one is Start with Why, Simon Sinek. And I think everyone's read that one. But it's really these days, as employees are much more purpose driven, we owe it to our talented, hardworking people to give them insight into why they're doing what they're doing. And we need to hold ourselves accountable as leaders to make sure that the why is worth it. It's not just about the what anymore. And it also has a side effect, the side benefit of making sure we're focused on the right things for the business, which is obviously really important. And then a bonus one, my son he's 16 and a half, and him and I do a lot of fly fishing together. So I'm rereading A River Runs Through It by Norman MacLean with him not to be confused with the movie. The book is fantastic. And it's not about fishing, it's about family and the development of the American West and what that was like. And I think my son's ready for it, and I needed an excuse to read it again.
Oh, great suggestions all around. Graeme, thank you so much for your reflections and for your recommendations. And thank you more generally for a great conversation, emblematic of the remarkable work you and your team are doing every day. I really appreciate you sharing your insights with me today.
Thanks, Peter. It was a fun conversation. Thanks for having me.